Hi, my name is Rachel, and I'm 34 years old. I've been living in this small, quiet town all my life. It's not a glamorous place, but it's home. I work as a local high school teacher, teaching history and literature. It's been a peaceful existence, one that I've grown accustomed to, but one I've never truly felt fulfilled in. I've always longed for something more. Something that might take me out of this town away from the memories that are constantly tugging at my heart. If there's one thing I've learned about life in a small town, it's that you can never really escape your past. The small streets, the familiar faces, the same old shops, it's all a reminder of the life you've lived. And sometimes, when you're stuck in a place that feels too familiar, you begin to wonder if the world out there has something else to offer. A new life, a new love, a new beginning. But for me, it wasn't that simple. I had always been content with my life. Here, or at least, I convinced myself I was. Teaching history at the local high school was a job I loved. I enjoyed the energy of the students, the passion of the subjects I taught, and the quiet satisfaction of helping young people discover the world through books. It was fulfilling in its own way, but it didn't fill the empty space inside me. That space was reserved for someone I once knew. Someone who had been my entire world. I remember the day Luke left this town as if it was etched into my memory. It was the summer after we graduated from college, and the world felt like it was at our feet. Luke and I had been inseparable since high school, partners in crime, dreamers with big plans for our future. We had talked about everything. Our hopes, our dreams, and the life we were going to build together. We had always promised that no matter where life took us, we would always come back to this town, to each other. But life, it seemed, had other plans. Luke had gotten an incredible job offer at a prestigious law firm in Chicago, and I, ever the supportive girlfriend, encouraged him to take it. It was the chance of a lifetime. How could I have stood in the way of his dreams? He promised. He'd come back, that he'd never forget me. But in the back of my mind, I knew things would change. He wasn't coming back to the small town that had always been my home. He was chasing success, chasing something bigger than this place, and I could already feel the distance growing between us. We tried to make it work phone calls, visits. When we could manage it, promises of visits during holidays. But the connection we had once shared slowly faded with every passing day. The distance, the new life he was building, began to erode the foundation of our love. And then, one day, the calls stopped. The messages became infrequent, and I found myself clinging to the memory of the boy who had once promised me forever. I spent the next few months in a daze. I couldn't believe it was over. How could it be over? We had made so many plans, talked about so many things, that life had moved on for him, and I was still here, in the same place, stuck in the past, waiting for someone who had forgotten all about me. As the years passed, I learned to adjust. I buried my feelings deep inside and focused on my work. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need him to be happy. But there was always that quiet ache, a longing I couldn't shake. I had built my life here in this town, and yet it felt like my heart was still elsewhere, still waiting for Luke. That life doesn't wait. The world keeps moving, and so did I. I taught. I made new friends. I kept my days filled with routines. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I tried to find comfort and stability in knowing what was coming next. The town was small enough that it didn't offer many surprises, and after a while, I became numb to the heartache I had carried with me. But I couldn't stop wondering about Luke. I'd hear bits and pieces of news, how his career had flourished, how he had become a successful lawyer, how he had moved into a big city apartment. But no one ever mentioned his personal life. And every time I asked about him, I was met with awkward silence. It was clear no one knew anything, or if they did, they weren't telling me. Then, there were the nights when I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the moments we had shared, our late-night talks, our walks through the town, the laughter, the plans. I'd remember the way his hands felt in mine, the warmth of his embrace, the way he made me feel like the only person in the world. But it was all gone now, lost in the winds of time. I told myself I was ready to move on, that I had moved on. But the truth was I was stuck. Stuck in the life I had built without him. Stuck in the dreams we had shared. Stuck in a town where I could still feel the echoes of our love. The town with its familiar streets, its quiet corners, its local diner where we used to meet, felt more like a prison than a home. It was a constant reminder of what I had lost, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape it. And so, I waited. I waited for a life that never came, for a love that had been swept away by time. I convinced myself that this was my life now, that this was all I was meant to have. But what I didn't know was that the past, the one I thought I had left behind, was about to come crashing into my present. And with it, the man I had once loved was coming back, not to pick up where we left off, but to find me still here, waiting for him. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when the unexpected news hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had just finished a meeting with the school's principal and was heading to the staff room for a quick break when Sarah, one of the other teachers, practically ran toward me with excitement written all over her face. "Rachel, guess what? You won't believe who's coming back to town," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with anticipation. I glanced up, not really expecting anything that could surprise me. "Who?" I asked, trying to hide the fatigue I was feeling. After years of seeing the same faces, hearing the same gossip, nothing really surprised me anymore. But Sarah was grinning too broadly to be ignored. "Luke Donovan," she said breathlessly. "He's coming back to start his own law firm right here in town. Can you believe it? After all these years?" For a moment, time seemed to freeze. My heart skipped a beat, and a wave of emotions hit me all at once. Luke? The Luke I had once loved. The one I had waited for. The one who had walked out of this town and never looked back. Luke, I repeated in disbelief, my voice cracking as I struggled to process the information. "He's coming back." Sarah nodded enthusiastically, oblivious to the storm of emotions brewing inside me. "Yes, I heard it straight from the mayor's office. He's setting up his law practice here, right where he grew up. Isn't that amazing?" I felt the world tilt beneath me as I struggled to steady myself. Luke, the man who had been my everything, was coming back. I had spent years thinking about him, wondering what he was doing, how his life was unfolding. But never in my wildest dreams had I imagined that one day I would see him again, standing in the very town he had left behind. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing the sudden tension in my shoulders. I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just ... Surprised. That's all." "Of course. Who wouldn't be?" she replied. "I'm sure he'll be a great addition to the town. And who knows, maybe he'll visit the school to give a talk about his experiences." I nodded numbly as Sarah continued to ramble about the return of the town's prodigal son. But inside, my mind was racing. I hadn't thought about Luke in years, not like this. I had convinced myself that I had moved on, that I was done with the past. But hearing his name again, knowing that he was coming back into my life, it stirred something deep inside me. The next few days passed in a blur. I found myself distracted at work, unable to focus on anything other than the thought of Luke's return. Every time someone mentioned his name, I felt a knot form in my chest. The past, the love I had tried so hard to forget, was flooding back into my life, and it felt like I was trapped between the person I had been and the person I had become. It wasn't until Friday that I saw him. I was walking down Main Street, heading to the local bookstore to pick up a new novel for the weekend, when I saw him standing in front of the old diner. He was talking to a few townspeople, laughing at something one of them said. His broad shoulders relaxed, his brown hair a little shorter, but still the same messy style I remembered so well. For a moment I froze. There he was, Luke Donovan, the man who had once been everything to me, the man who had promised me the world and then disappeared without a word. I stood there, watching him, my breath caught in my throat. It was surreal, like a scene from a dream. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. But now that it was happening, I didn't know what to do. Should I approach him? Should I pretend I didn't see him? But before I could make a decision, our eyes met. The connection was instant. Time seemed to stand still as our gazes locked. His eyes, the same warm, inviting blue, searched mine, as though trying to figure out if I was real, if I was the same woman he had left behind all those years ago. For a split second, I thought he might not recognize me, that so much time had passed that I had become just another face in the crowd. But then his expression softened, and he took a step toward me. "Rachel," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. I didn't expect to see you here." My heart was racing, and I struggled to find words. "Luke," I finally said, my voice a little shaky. It's been a long time." He nodded, looking almost sheepish, as if unsure how to react. "Yeah, it has. Too long. I didn't expect to be back here at all, but when the opportunity came up, I felt like it was time. There was so much I wanted to say. So many questions I had been carrying all these years. Questions that had never been answered. But I didn't know where to start. "You left," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You left without saying anything, without any explanation." Luke's face darkened slightly, and he stepped closer. "I know, and I'm sorry. For that, Rachel, I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just, I thought I had to go. I thought that was the only way I could move forward with my life." "You could have told me," I said, my voice growing a little stronger. "You could have told me you were leaving. You didn't have to just disappear." "I didn't know what to say," he replied quietly, his eyes filled with regret. "I thought you'd be better off without me. I thought you'd be able to move on. I was wrong." I felt a rush of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, all blending together in a whirlwind. How could he have thought that? How could he have left me without even trying to make it work? "I've moved on, Luke," I said, surprising myself, with the steadiness of my voice. "I've lived my life. I've built a future without you in it." He looked at me, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. "Rachel, But before he could finish, a car pulled up and a woman stepped out. A beautiful woman, tall and confident, with dark hair and a warm smile. She walked toward us, her arms slipping around Luke's waist, and my heart clenched. "Luke," she said, smiling warmly. "I was wondering where you were." Luke turned toward her, and I saw the way his face softened as he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Rachel, this is my fiancé, Jenna. We're getting married next month." For a moment, everything around me seemed to go quiet. The world faded away as I processed the words. Luke had moved on. He had a life, a future, with someone else. I could feel the sting of that truth, sharp and real. I didn't know you." "We're engaged," I whispered, feeling a lump form in my throat. Luke looked at me, his eyes filled with apology. "I never wanted you to hear it this way, Rachel. But yes, I'm getting married. Jenna smiled warmly, extending her hand to me. It's nice to finally meet you, Rachel. Luke's told me so much about you. I took her hand, though I couldn't muster a smile. It's nice to meet you too, I managed to say, my voice tight as I stood there. Looking at the two of them, I realized something deep inside. The life I had once imagined with Luke was just that, a dream. A distant memory. He had moved on, and I had to do the same. I should go, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It was good seeing you, Luke. I hope everything works out for you. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, my heart heavy, but a strange sense of finality settling within me. Luke had returned to this town, but he had found someone else. And in that moment, I knew that it was time for me to stop waiting for both of us. I walked away from Luke and Jenna, my feet moving faster than my thoughts, as if my legs knew the truth long before my heart was ready to admit it. Every step I took away from them felt like I was moving further into the future, a future that didn't have him in it. My hands were shaking slightly, and I could still feel the sting of his words echoing in my chest. I'm getting married. It was a phrase that played on repeat, drowning out everything else he had said. The world around me seemed louder, now, cars honking, people laughing on the streets, a dog barking nearby. But none of it mattered. I felt like I was walking in a fog, disconnected from everything and everyone. Luke had moved on, and I had been stuck in the past for far too long. I had spent years holding on to a version of him that no longer existed. I had imagined, hoped, that one day things would be different, that he would return, and we could pick up where we left off. That version of Luke was gone, replaced by a man who had built a life without me. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I realized that the life I had been waiting for was never going to happen. Easy to let go. It was never easy. That deep down, I knew it was the only way forward. I had to stop waiting for him. For the first time, I had to choose myself. The next few weeks were a blur. I spent my days teaching, losing myself in lesson plans, in student essays, in everything I could to keep myself from thinking about the past. The town, which had always felt too small, felt even smaller now. Everywhere I went, I was reminded of Luke, our favorite spots, the places we had visited, the places we had dreamed of together. But I knew I couldn't live in those memories forever. I couldn't stay stuck in the past. One evening, I was sitting at the local diner, the one where Luke and I had spent countless nights talking about our future, when Sarah, my friend from work, slid into the booth across from me. She gave me a concerned look as I stirred my coffee, lost in thought. "You've been quieter than usual," she said, studying me. "Are you okay?" I looked up, surprised that I hadn't realized how much I had withdrawn in the past few weeks. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. But even as the words left my lips, I knew it wasn't true. I was far from fine. But I was getting there. "I saw Luke today," Sarah continued, her voice gentle. "He asked about you. He seemed like he really wanted to talk to you. Maybe you should give him a chance to explain." I stiffened. I had expected this, of course. It was only a matter of time before someone brought up Luke again. He was back in town, after all. I had no doubt that the entire town was buzzing with his return. "I don't think there's anything to explain," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "He made his choice. He's getting married. And I'm moving on." Sarah frowned, as if she wanted to say more but thought better of it. "Just don't shut yourself off, okay? It's okay to feel hurt, but it's also okay to move forward. For you." I nodded, but her words lingered in my mind. Was I really moving forward? Or was I just burying my feelings, pretending they didn't? exist. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Luke's face, about how I had walked away from him without looking back. It wasn't that I didn't care anymore. I still cared. I always would. But it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. I had spent so long waiting for him, waiting for a love that had never truly been mine to hold. But now it was time to let go. The following Saturday afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the small law office Luke had opened on Main Street. It was a quiet building with a simple sign hanging above the door. Luke Donovan, attorney at law. I had promised myself I wouldn't go to see him. I had promised myself I would walk away, that I wouldn't give in to the pull of the past. But something inside me told me that if I didn't go now, I might never be able to let go. I stood outside for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Then, with a quiet resolve, I pushed open the door. Inside, Luke was sitting at his desk, speaking to a client. When the door opened, he looked up, and the recognition in his eyes was immediate. He excused himself from the conversation and walked toward me. "Rachel," he said, his voice warm but hesitant. "I didn't expect to see you here." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "I wanted to talk," I said quietly, my voice trembling with the weight of everything I had been holding inside. Luke motioned toward the empty chair across from his desk, and I sat down. There was a long, uncomfortable silence between us. I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eye, and neither could he. The distance between us felt infinite, and I realized just how much time and space had passed. "Rachel," he began, his voice soft but firm. "I've thought about you every day since I left. I never stopped caring. But when I got the job in Chicago, it felt like the right thing to do. I thought I could make it all work, my career, my future. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of what mattered most. And it was you." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let him see the hurt in my eyes. I had spent too many years trying to understand why he left, trying to make sense of the choices he had made. But now I was tired of questioning the past. "Luke," I said, my voice steady, "you made your choices, and I made mine. I spent so many years waiting for you, hoping you'd come back, but I can't keep living in the past, in the hope that something could be different." "I never wanted to hurt you," Luke said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong." "I know you were wrong," I replied softly, "but that's the past now. And as much as I loved you, I can't keep holding on to something that isn't there anymore." There was a long silence between us. Luke sat back in his chair, his eyes filled with regret. "I wish I could go back and fix everything," he said quietly. "But I know I can't." I smiled, though it was bittersweet. "We can't change the past, Luke, but we can choose our future. I've spent too long living in your shadow. I need to live for me now." He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "I understand. And I'm sorry, Rachel, for everything." I stood up, my heart heavy, but finally at peace. "Goodbye, Luke. I hope you find what you're looking for." As I walked out of his office and into the afternoon light, I realized something important. I had let go. I had made the choice to stop waiting for him, for the past, for a love that could never be mine. And in that moment, I knew that I was finally free. Luke had returned to the town he had left behind, and he had found me waiting. But what he hadn't expected was that I had already moved on. I had waited for him once, and now it was time to move forward with my own life. The chapter of us was over, but it had led me to a place where I could finally choose myself. And that, in the end, was the most important decision of all.